How complicated does our gardening need to be? I feel as if there is a commercialism that has made it unnecessarily complicated. Gardening, at its very core, is a simple activity. It is truly a minimalist occupation. The complexity of a garden is huge from a biological standpoint. But as a gardener, your inputs can be necessarily very limited and not large. Very minimal. It's a philosophical approach rather than a consumerist approach. And I think that we would be good to have that in mind. And so in this stream this evening, we will be talking about the minimalist approach to gardening. What do you really need at the core of this thing? This hobby, this experience. What do you really need at its core? This is a very good question. And from the standpoint of a long-time practitioner of minimalism, I see it as more of a mental block than as a agricultural block. It's not necessary to the agriculture. It is necessary to transform the mind. I want to say good evening to everyone here. Hello to the Bradley's Adventures, to the Big Dig, to the legendary Urban Gardening, to the New Tunes for Old Logoses, to the Alan Turpin, to the David Malinowski, to the Mojo Palms, to the Grant Raynard, to the Steve Solis, to the Cassie Davis, to the Heather Martin, to the Drew, to the It's a Crying Shame. A good evening and Little Slice of Paradise Homestead. Minimalism. We're talking minimalism. In a garden, we think, perhaps we must put all kinds of different things into this garden, because when you go to, say, the garden section of a large store, a big box store, you look at these big boxes in this store and you say, I must have these things. There are happy people in the pictures that are using these things, and they are creating a world around them. And this world is a fabrication of advertising agencies rather than a reality. But that reality that they want you to have, which is an unreality, is printed on your mind as you are there. And so you say, hey, I am here. I am here because I wish to have a garden. And then you get sidetracked. You see this unreality for sale. And it's not even that you have to buy it to have bought into it. You see it, it becomes part of you. You have seen the image. You have seen the way they wish you to buy this product often made in some third world country. It is the marketers that put this into your mind. This is what you have to have. And so if you don't have this thing, you will not be truly happy. Because they've created a need inside of your body, inside of your mind, inside of your soul, for something that you did not need before you saw it. So minimalism is escaping this and looking and saying, what do I really need in my garden? What do I really need? Sunshine, simple tools, some seeds, an application of time, a nurturing spirit, and more time. Anyhow, guys, how are you doing? That's probably enough of that, huh? It's all true, though. It's all true. The people that are like showing up. What the heck is this? What did I subscribe to? Why is this going on? Well, actual content starts here. I went to see David the Good. I listened to Portishead and drank spiced rum. He threw me off the ramp and broke my foot, broke my wheelchair, all in good fun. So you're looking at gardening. My gosh, man. You get so many things sold to you. I mean, I see it a lot because I get written all the time. I have a blog. thesurvivalgardener.com. And on that blog, you know, I have tons of articles, like 2,500, 3,000 or something. People are always trying to get me to link to their stuff, promote their stuff. And, hi, I'm Emma from such and such agency. I really love your content. Would you be interested in promoting such and such? I work for one of the world's biggest distributors of doodads. And if we could write an article, we'll pay you for a link. No. Weird things for the garden, right? Like gadgets and gizmos and if you just have this sort of one watering thing, it will do way better. Like your plants do way better if you have this special watering can. It's brass. Costs $150, but it'll make a big difference. If you put here, one of my neighbors, they have a raised bed made from plastic pieces, like pieces of vinyl that are stuck together. You know, it's junky. I mean, it looks nice, but it's made of plastic. I think it's junky. Here's this little frame thing, and kind of like the stuff fits into the slots, you know. And I'm looking at it and going, why did you do that? They have acres of yard, and there's one little corner there. There's this little prefabricated bed thing that they bought, and you don't need it. You don't need to go out and buy a $100 horse trough to have a garden in. Now, it's pleasant. There are times that you just want to do something that's pleasant. But if you're going to go minimalist, there's no need. You can garden right in the ground. Gloria says we don't need no stinking doodads. That's right. If I was to reduce gardening down to it's the basic goals and the basic needs, you're looking at using the soil, the sunshine, and the water to produce food for your family. You're looking at growing plants that have been harnessed by man over thousands of years to feed you. Rather than going out and foraging, you are bringing the plants to you, growing improved varieties, and getting a yield out of them. Today, Rachel and I picked most of the rest of the broccoli out of the gardens. I feel like big, beautiful heads of broccoli. And I thought, man, this is awesome. Go out and pick broccoli with my wife. They're just growing in the dirt. They were grown from seed. Now, they were grown from seed that I started in plastic trays with purchased potting soil. Did I need to do that? No.
If I didn't have the money for the plastic trays or the potting soil, I could have started them right in the ground. Back when I lived in north central Florida, there was an old lady. I think she's gone now. I drove past her house when I was in Florida, beginning of the year. It looked like the house was abandoned. It was kind of sad because I remember going by and buying roses from her before I had my own plant nursery even. She had a bunch of little plants, and she would start them, and she would sell them by the side of the road at little garage sales in milk jugs, and old ice cream containers and stuff like that. Those were her pots, and they were filled with sand, and she started them from cuttings. But she had little tea roses and succulents and various houseplants and things, and they were started with nothing. They were just like sand in tubs, free tubs. You don't really need anything expensive to garden. And by making it complicated, I think we lose a lot of people. You make a barrier to entry. And after 4 years of living in the... I'll be generous and call it the developing world, though it's actually developing. It was developed, and now it's less developed than it was. But there's a lot of stuff that you can't get, and there's Westerners. It's funny because there were some folks that had lived in the United States, and they had their little raised beds in the backyard, all pressure treated lumber, imported from Trinidad, and soil and stuff, and it was completely unnecessary, these little beds, because they had neighbors all around that used like big grub hose and chopped furrows into the ground and made mounds, and chopped furrows and made mounds. So they had these mounded beds like this, all down the hillsides, mound, rows and rows and rows of crops. Having this like perfect little controlled space it's not necessary. And spending what was probably, because of import costs and stuff, it was probably like $60-$70 US per bed to build. That's a lot of money there. People would make, $20 US to work all day in the sun there. And so, it's imported, it's complicated. But there's still this American mindset of that, like, we have to buy something. We have to do this thing. And you don't. You can garden and make food, I would say, for nothing. You don't even have to spend money. If you borrow the land, or if you have a piece of land already available, most people will let you garden somewhere. You can beg for seeds. And you meet any gardener will give you seeds. But even if you had to spend the money for seeds, $10 would buy you a lot of seeds. Like all the staples you need, really. I have gone dumpster diving back when I had way, well, I would say way less money, but not way less. But back when I was right on the edge of broke, and going through some interesting times. You go dumpster diving and look for useful things, and get old potatoes, right? And you could plant those potatoes. But these broccoli that I was harvesting today, it's like $2 worth of broccoli seed. Anybody can get $2 together. $2 worth of broccoli seeds, and then you end up with easily, $100 or more worth of broccoli heads a while later. And some of you are probably like, well, what about fertilizing? Well, fertilizing, it doesn't have to be difficult either. There are so many waste products that just go right on through the waste stream that can be used to feed a garden. It's astounding. If you had, let's say you go to church, right? I go to church. But let's say you don't go to church. Because I always say, I go to church, Let's say you don't go to church. Let's say you live the barren, empty life of a secular humanist. That's a quote from King of the Hill, by the way, if you didn't recognize it. Well, Hank, I guess we'll just live the barren, empty lives of secular humanists. Absolutely cracked me up. Anyhow, let's say you're part of some, let's say you're part of a dog walking group, and every once in a while they get together and they have a picnic. If you save all the scraps from a picnic and compost them, you could feed your garden. You can feed your garden with a 5-gallon bucket full of weeds rotting in water. You could feed your gardens with the coffee grounds that you get from an espresso stand. You could feed your garden with the plants, the duckweed, water hyacinth, lily pads, all that stuff growing on top of a pond. You could scrape that stuff up, pile it around your little broccoli plant as it rots down, it both waters and feeds the ground. It's incredible. It's too complicated. And one of the things I've tried to do in my books is to take complicated concepts and break them down into what's the simple way to do things. And I had to learn, first I had to live on a budget. After we got married, my wife and I were on one income, and I decided I was going to start my own business a year after we got married. And I did pretty well at it for 1 year. And then the next year was the big economic crash started, and people started cutting all their expenses, and one of the first things they cut was freelancers. They would keep their internal teams, and they would fire the freelancers. It's probably the opposite now. But I ended up, with a couple of children, and I was making I think I made $21,000 the entire year. And that was rough because I had a mortgage and we had bills, and we scraped along. We had a big garden. And that was a year, I think I told you guys, I was dumpster diving behind a Kmart, and I ended up with a whole bunch of tomato transplants. Hundreds. But, seeds are easy to come by. Seeds are a really, really cheap way to start your gardens. And gardening right in the ground, well, I had a woman write me once and say, well, I'd like to garden, but my husband hasn't built the beds yet. What about your prairie ancestors? They would be out there just chopping holes in the ground. I mean, they'd put a harness on one of the kids and have them drag a plow or something. Come on. Gotta wait for your husband to get you some pressure-treated boards and build you one of those ones that you saw on Pinterest. This is why there's no hope for Western civilization. You just gotta go out there and do it. All you gotta do is dig. Loosen the soil up a bit. It's not a big deal. You can make compost. I mean, golly. Gardening doesn't have to be that complicated. It doesn't have to cost you a lot. So when I wrote Compost Everything was written in part because my gardens had been wrecked like Scott Head's gardens, like Charles Dowding's gardens, I've been wrecked by a long-term persistent herbicide because I had bought 2 loads of manure from a dairy farm, and it had been contaminated with this herbicide, and it killed my garden beds. Killed them dead. I lost so much stuff. I lost plants. I lost long-term perennials. I lost a hedge of blackberries that I'd planted. You guys have heard the story. But I thought there's got to be better ways. And I knew that, I bought the composted manure because I was trying to do it the easy way. I'm going to buy it. Rather than make my own compost, I'm going to buy it. I had been composting for years before that. I did worm composting. I didn't chop and drop. I'd gotten all the coffee grounds from an espresso stand that a friend of mine owned. All this stuff. I had all this stuff. I knew how to do these things. But I needed a bunch of compost right away. So, ching, out comes the money. I paid for it. And then I really paid for it because it ended up killing my garden. So it's like, compost, everything came out of that. Because I had that bad experience. It was like, I'm getting back to how can I make compost out of everything that's hopefully not going to kill my gardens. Before I go any further, I want to thank Gloria J for this very generous super chat. Thank you, Gloria. That's very sweet of you. She writes, for you and Rachel, thank you for sharing your life. Well, thank you, Gloria. You're amazing. A little while after we moved back here, Gloria sent us some of the plants. She mailed us a care package of some of the plants I used to have and I had not been able to find again. Moved back to Alabama. I left a lot of stuff behind from my tropical experiment and starting over again with almost nothing. And, well, except for a bunch of kids. At least I had a bunch of kids, but not a lot of plants. And she sent us a care package of plants, which was just amazing. But back to the minimalist gardening. That $50, right? Gloria just sent $50. If you spent $50 on your gardens, you could have way more than you need to feed them. $50 would go a long ways. So if you're going to be real minimal, but you weren't going to make your own, that $50 is enough for you to buy fertilizer and buy seeds and have enough to buy yourself a garden hoe with. And it's about all you need. The joy of gardening is not higher when you have more money. It's not actually, I don't think, that much more pleasant to have more stuff. It's nice to have extra money. It's nice to have the savings, when something breaks, to not be panicky over it, to be like, oh, I have enough money to, fix the washing machine. But we've gone without it too. And having gone without it, you appreciate some things. Go, this is necessary, or this is very useful. But with gardening, a lot of the extra stuff, a lot of the extra stuff is not really necessary. It doesn't add to the joy of gardening. Look at the grocery row systems that I'm making. The manure that I used to feed them when I first built them, I got from a neighbor's yard, and the farmer over there, like my neighbors said, they said that farmer's too cheap to spray anything. So I found out he didn't spray anything. He never sprayed the fields, and the hay wasn't sprayed, and the cows were raised up there, and there was an area where he fed the cows, and there was a bunch of old rotten manure there. So I went over and scavenged it. There are no borders on those beds because I like that I can just hoe my way right down the paths, and if the beds start to erode too much, you could scrape out some of the paths and throw it back on top of the beds. No big deal. You could reshape things if you like. If you ever tried to weed around the edges of raised beds, you know how the grass gets in between the edges of the beds and the inside. Like the grass and the weeds and stuff always seem to find a way to work themselves between the wood and the dirt and become a pain in the neck. You know, it's great. It looks nice. But it's completely unnecessary. I mean, that $50, right? If you were going to build raised beds, you'd get what? I mean, with today's lumber prices, get a 4-foot by 4-foot bed. You couldn't get a hoe. You probably wouldn't be able to get seeds. And forget the fertilizer. You don't need that much. I mean, you have to look at what's your goal. Your goal is to grow healthy food for your family. Don't let people sell you stuff that you don't need. Don't let people sell you stuff. I just don't want to do it. You know, there are fun things now. Like, I've enjoyed buying the micronutrients and testing them side by side. I had somebody send me some money and say, here, put this towards the garden. I said, okay, cool. So I bought enough micronutrients to last me for like 3 years. Amortized out, it's really not that bad. Do I need it? Nah. I know how to garden without it. Do I enjoy having it and experimenting with it? Yes. I realize that there's a point beyond the basics where throwing more money at something doesn't make it better. It's a law of diminishing returns. You may have heard that before. So this guitar right here is a high-end guitar. This is not near the highest end guitar, but this is a high quality guitar. So this guitar is way better. Let me show you a second guitar. Let's talk about minimalism while I show you my guitar collection. Oh, the irony! Alright. Well, this guitar is a guitar I played for years. I paid $20 for this guitar. The action's a little bit high. Probably can't see that. The end of it is smacked in. Big crack down here. This is a Washburn. It's a little out of tune, but it's not a bad player. This is a going camping guitar. This guitar I paid $20 for because somebody at the store dropped it. Music Arts Enterprises down in South Florida. Somebody dropped it, shattered this, broke this here, smashed in the end peg, and the bridge had exploded and split off it. So I bought it for $20. I re-glued the bridge on took it over to my grandpa's place. My grandpa was a carpenter. This is about when I was about 20. Took that guitar over to my grandpa's place, and I asked him, how would you fix this? And he's like, oh, you're going to have to brace that thing in there because you have to clamp it pretty well. And so I took a couple of pieces of wood and some C-clamps and kind of messed around until I cleaned out where the old glue was, and I set it on there and clamped it down there with some wood glue, Elmer's wood glue, and it glued it, and it's still working. That's 20 years ago. I fixed that guitar and I gave it to Rachel when we were dating so she could learn how to play guitar. And then I married her and got it back. So I had that guitar a long time. This guitar, you will pay over $1,000 for this guitar. This is a Taylor. This is a American made, 310 CE model number. This is a high-end guitar. This guitar here has a noticeably better tone. Plus, it plugs in. It has the amazing onboard electronics. It's got the piezo, all this stuff. I bought a Taylor after my dad died. I love my dad. And when I went to his burial, I was thinking, life is short. I've been playing a guitar with poor action that's all beat up for years and years. It would be nice to have a good guitar. And I sunk more money into a guitar than I have ever sunk into a guitar. But it's a lifetime guitar. And I think, was it worth that much more money? Considering how much I play the guitar, yeah. But, right? I could say yeah, but I don't need it. Didn't need it. I could still play that Washburn forever. It would have been dang fine. Fine with a Washburn. And when you're in a different position in life, where you are makes a difference on what you should do. If I was a professional musician, like gigging and stuff, I would want to buy a guitar that was good and solid. I don't want one where the bridge might accidentally pop off it again, it goes out of tune, etc. So you can get a cheap guitar. What I recommend is going and playing a bunch of guitars, Big Dig, and then, saying which one sounds good, which one feels comfortable to me, which one plays well. But these this Taylor, both of them play the same music. This one sounds better, it looks better, has a higher resale value, and it has the onboard electronics. And the onboard electronics are great if you play live, and I played live with it quite a few times. So, it pays for itself over time. It's a good tool. I play it on YouTube all the time, and I'm totally justifying it to myself. But now, Taylor here, I played this guitar, and then I played the next ones higher than it. I played the 400 series, and I played up to the 600 series. There was a koa wood Taylor with abalone inlays and like incredible inlays and everything, and just this amazing rippling koa wood, etc. It was like $4,500. I played it at the same time. Played this guy. You know what? The way this one played and sounded, I liked better than a guitar that cost 3 times as much. There's a pretty big jump from a cheap guitar. That Washburn, sound-wise, if you play them side by side, and you feel how well this neck feels, plus the fact that I can plug this one in. I can plug this one in, and it sounds amazing when you plug it in. That one you can't plug in at all. There's a nice jump up. It's like the difference from going from a wash tub and a wringer to going to a modern washing machine that spins most of the moisture out and everything. Now, if I was to go from $1,000 to $4,500, there's only a little bit better you get. What do? You get different inlays. You get prettier inlays. Maybe you get prettier wood. Is the sound all that much better? No, it's not. You could barely tell the difference at all, if any. There's a big difference. Big difference between a cheap and a professional. But when you get into professional to like super expensive, there's not that much of a difference anymore. And that's the way it is with gardening, right? If you got $10, you got the dirt, you got a pack of seeds, you've got an old beat up hoe, whatever. You go up, you spend more, what do you get? Well, you go buy some transplants. But you could have started your own transplants. When you go put raised boundaries on your beds, well, guess what? Plants don't care if there's boundaries on your beds. You can make a nice mound and plant on it. That's what I do. I make mounds and plant on it because I don't want to spend all the time and effort. You could upgrade it so you could put brick walls. You could garden in like beautiful. You could put slabs of marble out there and garden into. You could make the hanging gardens of Babylon. Will it grow a better carrot? No. If you spend $50 on excellent, amendments for the soil, etc., will you grow a better carrot? Yes. But if you spend $1,000, does it grow a better carrot? It's not better than that $50 carrot. It's like there's this economy. The economy goes down. Once you have a roof over your head, a space to garden in, a car, washer, a dryer, you're pretty comfortable. Running water, electricity, very comfortable. AC, yes, super comfortable. When you get more money, you can buy nicer things of stuff that you already have that's convenient, right? So instead of having an AC where you go over and you push the button to turn the thing on, you can be like, AC, go colder, and the AC goes colder. Wow, that was worth $10,000 more dollars. You could get a refrigerator, a Frigidaire, $800. Nice big refrigerator with an ice maker. It works great, holds a ton of food. You go, no, you know what? I need that one that's connected to the Internet of Things. I need a stainless steel fridge. Well, great. You can pay for a stainless steel. You can get a $2,500 fridge. You get a $4,800 fridge. Does it keep the eggs better? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It gets ridiculous. So you don't really need anything, that crazy to garden. It really minimal. Anyhow. Yeah, 12-pack, that's a little much there. So you get going in your garden, and you could try to make it crazier. You can build the hanging gardens of Babylon, but you totally don't need to. Benjamin says your $100K pickup monster truck will carry the milk back to your house from the supermarket, exactly the same as a used Honda Civic. Yeah, you guys will see my van in an upcoming video. My van is a 2006 Ford Econoline with 177,000 miles on it. Runs great. I love it. I love it. It's got a big ding down the side that says, I don't care if you run into me. Stay out of my way. But gardening is within the reach of just about anybody. And and the poorer the country, the more people garden, and often the smarter they get about it. It's like when it becomes absolutely necessary rather than a matter of marketing and looking pretty, the gardens get it's strange. It's like necessity is the mother of invention, but it gets, these Rasta guys down in the Caribbean chop these areas of the woods down. They burn it, they spread the ashes around. They knock holes in the ground, they plant hunks of yam. They'll go and get a little cheap chemical fertilizer and sometimes throw it on there, and sometimes they don't. Depends on the farmer. Some of the Rastas are like, no chemicals for me. They'll have, they'll keep a couple of cows in the bush and they'll take the cow manure and they'll throw it around, whatever. But they'll put these, these like rough areas of land into production, and they'll do it over the course of a week or so. You'll see the area get cleared, all the brush and stuff, it gets cleared, and they plant it up, and they'll haul out piles of calories, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of calories in yams with very, very little input other than labor and sunshine. Sometimes they have some water. Most of the time they plant with the beginning of the rainy season. They spread them wide. so they get enough water from the rains. They have drains that, hold some of the water. It's not that hard. Like Food Bear says here, if you got food scraps, you might be able to feed your garden. Yeah. Amanda says, I had to abandon my car. I now drive a bicycle. Yeah, and my video there with where, let's see, when was it? The video I did that had Clarence living in the tiny home, like just that clip for a minute, you could see my bicycle there. I got a bike for $20 from a thrift store, and one of my sons loves to fix things, and so he put new tires on it because they were dry rotted. He put in new inner tubes, put a basket and a rack on it, and now I bike. We've got a dollar store that's not that far from us, and I will bike to the Dollar General and buy groceries and bike home. It's great. I love it. I like the exercise of it. Now, it's a big upgrade to go from a bicycle to a car, because a bicycle has a very, really a limited range comparatively, Big Dig says, have tons of pepper plants from a few rotting peppers. Yeah, that's the way to do it. You get, you drop a slice of tomato on the ground at the right time of year and you throw a little dirt over it, you will grow tomatoes out of it. You could plant a bed of tomatoes from a half-eaten Big Mac. Ahava Richardson says, I'm homeless and unemployed, but I use my food stamps to purchase seeds and vegetable plants. That's wise. That's more wisdom than a lot of people with homes and employment have. It's important. I think a lot of times we will throw money at things to fix them rather than try to think our way through them. And when you don't have the money, you figure it out. Foo Bear says, I threw a half-ripe tomato that got killed by first frost into my worm bed and it sprouted. Yeah. If you got weeds, you might be able to feed your garden. That's right. I saw a sticker on a van yesterday and it said, I used to be cool. Blowtorch Sky says, that's funny. That's funny. So, anyhow, I just wanted to encourage you guys, do the simple way. It's kind of fun. Yes, you could grow a bed of tomatoes with a half-eaten Big Mac. David the Good, 2021. Thank you, Benjamin. I surprise myself. That's so funny. Any edible plant can be purchased with a food card. Well, that's nice. That's excellent. All right, Backyard Foundry, Organic Gardening in North Carolina. Hey, it's all right. We all have fake accounts that we post under. David the Good is the best gardener on the internet. Wait a minute. That's David the Good's other account. Yeah. So, I'm going to answer questions if anybody's got questions, because I think I've talked enough about minimal gardening. Dig. Plant seeds. Fertilize with whatever you can get. If you got a hoe the weeds away. It's not hard to minimalist garden. It's not hard to have a minimalist garden. Thomas says seeds can be got at the grocery store. Potatoes, tomatoes, apples, pears, dried beans. Save a few you don't eat. Fill a garden. Absolutely. Absolutely can. Amanda says, how to extend the growing seasons. Well, the simplest way to extend a growing season is to plant the plants that grow in each season. So, cool season vegetables. Brassicas, onions, garlic. Those those will sail through. Fava beans go down into the teens. Peas, stuff like that. And then you plant the hot season stuff in the hot season, the warm season, the beans, the corn, the melons, all those things. If you plant with the seasons, most of the time I don't try to extend the season. I will do a little bit of frost protection on stuff. If I've got it in the ground early and a late frost threatens, I'll cover it with mulch and leaves, keep it alive, that kind of thing. But I don't like to go, I'm going to put a bunch of row covers up. Now, if I lived further north, if it was economically viable and it made sense, I'd probably set up, a big greenhouse and row covers and stuff like that. But I like to be simple. Like, I don't like to have to throw netting over things or throw covers over things. I hate, buying stuff bugs me. So, those are summer food here. Well, if it's cold enough, just grow, if it's so cold that you need extensions and things, I would read Elliot Coleman's books, because he's in a colder climate and he's got very good recommendations. 7B. When I was in 7B, I was in the border of 6 and 7 in Tennessee. I still just garden with the seasons. I just counted the winter as throwing stuff on the ground season. I would bury the kitchen scraps in the mulch until the mulch froze. Sometimes the mulch would freeze. And then those days, the stuff would wait in buckets until I could throw it out there. Martha W. says, is there a secret tip for getting rid of spiny pigweed? Got it from my last delivery of 50/50 compost and core. Oh, it's horrible. Now, yes, the way you get rid of it is you don't ever let it go to seed again. Spiny pigweed is horrible stuff, but wear gloves, yank it every time you see it. Don't let any of it go to seed anywhere on your land. It'll disappear in a year or two. It's a pain in the neck, but... Steve says, David, have you ever worked with elevated beds to make them easier to work with if you have back issues? No, I've seen them. I like the concept. My friend Kevin, who's in a wheelchair, we were talking about building some sort of a system like that. So at the level that he's seated at in his wheelchair, he could take care of gardens. But I have not worked with them myself, other than when I put an old refrigerator up on blocks and knocked holes in the back of it and planted herb gardens. I did a few of those and they worked really well. Knockman Bayever says, is urine deleted 16:1 still effective? I recently acquired a hose and sprayer for fertilization, but that is the highest concentration I can do. Should I just fertigate? 16:1 still effective. It's just not as effective as 8:1. That's about half, 10:1, 8:1, 6:1. That range is usually where you would fertilize with it. But if you watered regularly with 16:1, you would see a difference. It would be effective. Fertigate is cool, I guess you could boil your urine down. No, that's gross. That's too much. Arlen says, is growing bananas easy? They are so cheap at the store, but I would miss them if the store closed. Yeah, it's absolutely super easy to grow bananas if you have the right climate for bananas and enough rainfall for bananas. Those are the really important things. If you don't, they're not easy to grow. Bananas, you could grow dwarf bananas in pots and haul them in and out and try to get fruit from them. But if you're in zone 9, 10, you could grow bananas pretty easily if you've got varieties that'll take zone 9. The varieties are important. You want fast-growing varieties, and you will lose them to freezes occasionally, the tops of them, but they'll grow back. But if you're in zone 10 or 11, it's super easy. It's just a matter of giving them enough fertilizer and water. Any advice for growing watercress? No, I've never been in the proper climate for watercress. Hey, good day, Richard. Nice to see you again, man. Yes, Charles Downing has some good stuff. He's inspiring, Lauren. Haji says, I tried to grow some black beans the same way they taught us about plants in pre-K. Plastic bag, paper towel, warm spot. It's possible I cooked them under my heat mat. It's possible. Sometimes they just rot. I would just plant them right in pots and water them. Debs and Rich Refuge says, what do you know about wild pineapple weed, wild chamomile plant? What can I do with it? I don't know anything about it. I would have to look it up. Send me an email if you want, and I'll see if I can find out something on it. But I really don't know. I haven't seen that before. Thomas says, the hungry gap is a real thing up north. Kale goes for a long time. But back in the day, people up north ate lots of fermented and preserved foods, pickled, etc. Denmark, lots of pickled beets, etc. Yeah, as I've said before, the further north you get, the more people generally relied on small grains and animal products. Animals that could live through the winter or that could be salted down and stored for, high levels of calories. Animals that graze over a large area, like deer, moose, elk, and fish, that sort of thing. That's where people would live, because if you got like a 90-day growing season, you're not able to grow a ton of calories without a lot of work and planning, and things have to go just right for you. There is a definite hunger gap, and that's why there's a bazillion types of preserved meats from Northern Europe. You get down into the tropics, and it's like, I could stick stuff in the ground at any time. There's huge roots. I can harvest giant roots. There's fruits falling off of trees all year round. It's ridiculous. There's so much food. Why would I bother? I could always do something tomorrow, Scott says, Steve Solomon loves fertigation. Yeah, I'm experimenting with it right now. I've got some 5-gallon buckets. I've been drilling holes in it. We haven't had very much rain. Drilling holes in it and putting my Dave's Fitted swamp water in the buckets and putting it right at the base of different plants. In a couple of weeks, I'll know how much difference it makes, Benjamin says, it's funny my zone doesn't have a lot of garden YouTubers. I'm 10A, and like most people are living in a cold area or like Hawaii where it's way hotter. Kevin from Epic Gardening is great, though. Oh, yeah, Kevin's fantastic. And zone 10A, I mean, that's a big chunk of Florida. The whole is like right along the coastlines, and then down the southern, everywhere south of like Polk County. There's a lot of 10 there. It's a great gardening area. You can pull in some stuff from temperate climates and some stuff from, a lot of stuff from the tropics will live there, Perla says, hi, David. Been following you and have been inspired and have learned from you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge of gardening to us. Well, you're very welcome, Perla. Thank you. I appreciate it. Figs are doing well. So far, so good. Not much to say yet, Yeah. Veronica says, I also struggle with sticker weeds. Pull them for the root, and there are many. Oh, yes. Everything wants to grow. Molly says, 7B here. Is it possible to take cuttings from Mulberry Tree during fruiting season? Yes. Sometimes. I would cut the fruits off of them. They generally rooted better for me after fruiting, but they'll still root sometimes. It really depends on the tree. The different varieties of mulberries have way different rooting. Some of them are a pain and some of them aren't. Brett says, I garden every day with the mindset that I'm getting older and I'll slowly be losing the ability to do the heavy stuff, thinking years in advance. Yeah, that's one of the reasons, too, I recommend planting trees. You plant trees, the trees are much less labor on your back than, bending over and digging potatoes and all that kind of stuff. Scott says, hey, David, what about using a baby pool for lotus root? It may not be deep enough for lotuses. Favorite mango variety? Go! There's a variety called Ceylon that's very delicious, but my favorite is called Starch. It's a polyembryonic variety, a small fruited sweet tart. Very good. Well, thanks, Rip. I hope you enjoy the composting book. I put the link to the composting book below all my videos. So it's a composting booklet. It's like a distillation of some of what's in Compost Everything. Pickled fish, blood sausage, that's right. Eat all that stuff. Thank you, Sunday. Hand-wired amps and effects. Man, amps and effects, that's fantastic. I'm fascinated with that sort of thing, but I'm not good at wiring. I tried to build a guitar pedal once, and I read the wiring diagram wrong, and all I made was noise. What Colleen says, what are your family's favorite foods to preserve? Pickled, dried, XYZ. I'll tell you, I love making hot sauce. I like dried cayenne pepper. I had enough cayenne pepper one year to dry a bunch of them and grind them. It was delicious, so sweet and spicy. My wife made a bunch of chow chow today. She loves doing that. She's on like her third round since we moved here. We had all that cabbage, so she made chow chow, which is like a sweet sour relish. She also put tomatillos in it and kohlrabi and all kinds of stuff. Very good. The pear salsa is fantastic. I love wild grape jam. Wild grape jam is good, good, good. You have to add sugar to it to make it good, but those wild muscadines they've got a punchy flavor, very much like it. There's a lot of things that we like to do. I did dry a bunch of potatoes as an experiment, but they would not rehydrate. It was like trying to chew on a belt. It's terrible. We like to make sauerkraut, kimchi. We fermented some turnips. Those were good. I like live fermentation, but right now we do have some vinegar pickles that Rachel made that are good. They came out a little too sweet, like woo hoo hoo. I mean, a lot of people like them pretty sweet, but they were a little too sweet for me. I'm trying to get it. Thank you, Diana, very much for the super chat. Much appreciated. Steve Solomon's a real person. Steve Solomon wrote Gardening When It Counts. Brian says, how can I grow peppers in a cool summer climate? Most days in the low 70s. Put black plastic around them. Black plastic on the ground helps. It will warm the soil and warm the pepper, and it will make them fruit better. I mean, normally I wouldn't put black plastic in the garden, but for melons, peppers, tomatoes in that climate, I would put black plastic on the ground. Perla says, you talked about putting the seeds of apples in the fridge before planting. I have successfully propagated apples by putting the seeds directly to the pot, and it grew. Yes, it will sometimes. Sometimes they sprout right in the apple. But another thing is they like that chill period. Most of the time they require a chill period to sprout. But many times apples are kept chilled before they are put for sale in the store. So those apples may have been pre-stratified for you too, or maybe they just wanted to sprout because they love you. I did a thing, sends a $5 super chat and said, what would you recommend for a compost fruit tree ring in zone 3? Ooh, like a banana circle. Oh man, that is a good question. That is a good, let me think on that for a minute. You know, it would be fun to do that sort of a thing with, say, apples. You know, apples, and I like lingonberries. Lingonberries would grow really well there. Cranberries. If you have acid enough soil, cranberries like a marshy situation, so you could put them to the inside, cranberries to the inside, and maybe apples around the outside. 3 apples, keep them small. Man, you could put a Siberian pea shrub in there for chop and drop. You could put some Jerusalem artichokes on one side of it. That would be fun. Just a few thoughts there. Beach Bear. Hey, nice to see you, Beach Bear. Beach Bear sends a super chat and says, hey, bought a carambola and it's suffering in its pot because I'm terrified to plant it near the house. Whatever's not near the house is near the sewer line. Will it keep roots small if pruned? Yeah, they're not a big tree. I would not worry about a star fruit at all. Don't worry about it. Just plant it next to the house. It'll be fine. Obviously, I'm just this guy on the internet. But seriously, I would plant it right next to the house. I mean, it's like I grew a key lime right next to my house, some guavas right next to my house. No problem. Now, there are some things that'll push your foundation around and stuff, but the star fruit that's a small tree. It's not a big tree. And you're right. If you prune it, just plant it. It'll be fine. I wouldn't worry about it. Brett says, been making moringa swamp water out of older leaves and branches. Plants and trees love it. Oh, yeah, it's good stuff. Kat says, should I even make fermented cabbage here in Puerto Rico? Is it so hot I don't even know if it's any good to try? That's a very good question, Kat. I did it. We did it pretty regularly. We made fermented vegetables, but what we found in the tropics was that you have to add more salt. They just need to be more salty. If you don't put more salt in it, they get skunky flavors. Normally, you know, and here's what I would do. Extra salt, leave it on the counter for like the first 3 days. After 3 days, put it in the fridge. Let it keep fermenting there for a week or two. So those first few days, man, it's fermenting fast because it's warm. It's like in the 80s, you know? And then you just stick it in the fridge and let it keep fermenting there, and the flavors were good. But if you don't put enough salt in there, if you use any low salt type recipes, it would taste like socks. But we got really good sauerkraut in the Caribbean by adding a little extra salt and then putting it in the fridge. And of course, you don't have to worry about extra salt if you're living in Puerto Rico. You're going to sweat it all out anyways. New Tunes for Old Logo says, David, when you dump out a barrel of swamp water, how long does the rotten stuff smell like death? It's like a day. It goes away, or less. If it's sunny out, you know, the sun dries it up and takes it away. It's not too bad. It's like a day. Benjamin says, 10A is awesome. I think they say it's the most diverse zone. I literally have a banana and 3 stone fruit in my backyard, along with citrus, avocado, etc. Yes, it's great. Backyard Foundry says you should get some figs this year. There's some growing in the pots, but I don't know. I don't know if we'll get figs or not. That'd be nice. David says, what is the best calorie crop to grow in Tennessee? I would say potatoes, with dent corn being a close second. Corn grows quite well in Tennessee. And those dent varieties, like big ears, you can use them for roasting, but if you dry them, that is a great grain for grits and hominy, etc. And then after that, I would say sweet potatoes, and then after that, winter squash. All those will do quite well for you. Turnips are easy too, but you know, not everybody loves turnips. Jesus says, I have lots of slugs. Worries me about chop and drop and also keeping winter squash off the ground so the slugs don't get to them. Any suggestions? Yeah, if you have a big problem with slugs, I would not do the chop and drop thing. I would just grow in the dirt, and that keeps the slugs from becoming a big problem. Like, they like to hide under stuff, and so they will hide under all the leaves and things in your garden and tear your stuff up. You can break the pest cycle by tilling them, tilling the ground under and, raking up all that material. You may want to compost it separately and just add your compost. When I had issues with slugs and things, often what I did was my gardens had bare dirt, which I often covered with cover crops, but bare dirt in the gardens where the pest issues would be a big deal. Sometimes this was a thing in the tropics. There's just so much stuff that lives there. Everything wants to eat your plants. So if you have a bunch of mulch and stuff around them, it's just this massive ecosystem of stuff that comes up and gnaws the living daylights out of your plants. You don't like that. That's not good. Plants don't appreciate it. But I would save the chop and drop for my perennials because the slugs are not that big a deal on perennials. So all the extra crops and stuff, every time you want to chop and drop it, throw it around your peaches, your mulberries, your edible hedges, whatever, Thomas says, here we eat raiskjot. I don't know if I said that right. Fermented lamb meat, which is hung at least 6 months, unsalted, rich in probiotics, roasted, and served with strong drink. That sounds fantastic. I would eat that. Treywick Ellis says, I use the dirty water from the little duck pool for my 2 ducks mixed with the droppings from my rabbit cages and fertigate different trees and plants once or twice a day. The plants love it. Oh, yes. That was one of the best ways to get fruit trees to grow fast. Tammy says, I have tomatoes growing all over my property. I drop seeds everywhere. Good work. You are a good gardener. Live for Viv. Just moved. Slugs. Oh, I'm trying to get here. Slugs here have a harder skin. Best way to kill: put out saucers of cheap beer. They tend to kill themselves with beer. Slugs are nature's drunks. But you can also put salt on them. It's kind of terrible, but ducks and chickens love to eat them. The problem is they tend to eat everything else too in your garden. Mojo Palm says, I have guitars enough to cover every month of the year twice over. If I put together a couple of calendar layouts, could I call it guitardening? I don't know. You're guitarded. It's weird. Yep, you got to keep those chickens in the coop sometimes too. Besides, it doesn't make any sense to like let the chickens run through the garden and destroy your garden. I mean, they would destroy your garden. And I'd like this, well, I'm going to incorporate chickens in my garden. Well, good luck. In between harvests and stuff, maybe. Concerned Being says, what do you do with older apple trees that are overgrown and dead in spots? Is there a way to rehab them? Yeah, I would prune them in the winter. Prune them to shape. Prune them back. If if they've got dead wood, remove it. Crossing wood, remove it. Get some air in the middle there. And then feed them and water them real well that next spring. Get them running again. Also, if you prune them back pretty severely, and you can graft on them too, but overgrown and dead in spots, no big deal. I did a video on pruning plum trees earlier this spring. It's very similar. Skill Cult, Stephen Edholm on YouTube. Stephen Skill Cult. Stephen has a lot of stuff on pruning that's really good. Do root cellars work in North Florida? Are they made differently than others? Yeah, no. The root cellars, the ground is about 72 degrees in North Florida. It doesn't work very well. Oh, you're very welcome, Colleen. What do I do about snails? Same thing with slugs. You give them beer to drink. They die. Nancy says, do you ever have pest problems when you chop and drop? Yeah, like I said, the stuff gets in there. Hey, Tysa says, oh my gosh, I finally caught a live Goodstream. You feel starstruck? Well, hi. How are you? Have a good evening. Nice to see you. May your thumbs always be green. I'm live. Blowtorch Sky says, I'm using Jerusalem artichokes as a privacy fetch. Fantastic. Am I having any luck with cucumbers this year? Belinda asks. Yes. I've been getting a decent amount of cucumbers. They're not that happy because it's been really dry lately. It seems like watering is not as good as rain. Steve says, are all star fruit created equal? I've never had one. What do they taste like? They are sweet and sour, almost lemonade-like. They're pleasant. They're not all created equal. If you buy them in the store, they're probably going to be slightly bitter, watery, and awful. And some of them are very sour. And some of the best ones are like drinking a good lemonade. Not quite lemon flavor, but similar. It's very good. Alan says, what ways have you found to increase efficiency over the years? You just start to recognize which things do better than others, and you plant the stuff that does better. You plant the stuff that does better right from the beginning instead of fiddling around. It really makes sense to do your experiments at the beginning of a property. Plant 10 different varieties of tomatoes. Whichever one does the best, that becomes your good tomato for the next year. You try it again. Hopefully, it does well the next year too. But I find that doing the experimenting at the beginning, which soil amendment did well, soil amendment test beds, which varieties are doing well for me, what, you tend to create systems over time if you're observant and you learn from your mistakes and you learn from what grows and what doesn't. Have a good night, Amanda. Benjamin says, how fast do ice cream bean grow from seed? Oh, they sprout pretty fast. Mine were pretty slow, but I have a feeling that once they get running, they grow fast. Unfortunately, the ones I started from seed, I left not that long after, and the rainy season was just starting, so I don't know how tall they would get. But I think they should be taller than 10 feet in 3 years, though. New tunes for old logos sends a 99-cent super chat. Thank you very much. With that is a weird smiley face. Thank you. I appreciate it. Lauren says, any suggestions for keeping iguanas from eating your stuff? Physical barriers are basically the best way to keep them out. Yeah, I mean, otherwise you just shoot them and trap them all the time. My in-laws trap them. They have a cage there and they trap them. I don't know what they do with them after they trap them. I didn't ask, but I would feed them to my plants, or I would eat them. Like the big ones, I would eat them. Marty leads. Thank you, Marty. It says a super chat and says, David the Good, make a record. I will, because Scott Head said the other night, if I made a record, he would write a Texas gardening book for my publishing house. And I'm going to take him up on it. You know, he's a man of his word. He's got to do it now. I just got to do it. That little human says, herbicide poison soil, what to do? Okay. First of all, don't add any more purchased manure or compost or straw or whatever you put in there. But second of all, you can grow corn in it. You can grow grasses in it. You can grow rye in it. You can grow anything in the grass family. Sorghum, Sudan grass, whatever, sod. That stuff will take it up. Cut that material, throw it away multiple times. It will suck the herbicide out of the soil. The other thing you can do is till in fresh charcoal. Fresh charcoal. That'll soak it up and make it less of a problem. Also, adding more dirt or tilling the area. If you till the area over and water it and till it and water it, grow grass family stuff on it, grow winter rye, grow wheat, cut that stuff, throw it away. And you've also got some charcoal in the soil. That'll usually deal with it. It'll go away. I don't know. I had an iguana when I was down in the Caribbean. It tasted good to me. Maybe I just don't. I mean, it was free. Any tips on prepping fruit trees for when a hurricane comes? I'm on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Yeah, basically, I'm sorry. I'm still, this cold is beating me. Basically, with fruit trees, if they have a lot of long dangly branches and they've not been pruned open, they could catch the wind more, you know. I would be tempted to keep the trees shorter and more open if I knew that they were going to get hit regularly. Sing a song of six hens pocket full of rye. That's good, Amanda. Not bad for 3 a.m, I'll tell you what. How do I get rid of ants? You can either flood them out, pour boiling water into their nests, pour gasoline in and light them on fire, which I don't recommend doing in your garden. I don't recommend doing that at all. It's terrible. Don't ever do that. Horrible. Never. I would never do that. And if it's fire ants, I use Amdro fire ant bait because it's not particularly toxic. They eat it and die. You can also dust the hills with 7 and they die. Snails are just slugs with mobile homes, Jesus says. That's very nice. I like that. Big Dig says everyone says beer, but I can't spare mine. Yeah, you know. Well, you can strain the slugs out of it and drink the beer afterwards. No, that's gross. Trevor says suggestions for a privacy hedge with a use near Birmingham, Alabama. Full sun. Also, I always share your 7 ways to feed your garden for free film when everyone asks what's the best for it. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. A lot of people seem to enjoy that video, the 7 ways to feed your garden for free. I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. It was fun. But privacy hedge with a use. Let's see. You would be zone. You'd be about zone 7/8. Let me think. I would probably plant a combination of pears and stone fruits, like an edible hedge with berries in between. You could grow Jerusalem artichokes in between. You could make like a thick enough, basically like a long grocery row garden like I've got, but with just all kinds of bits and pieces in it. Throw cannas at the bottom. The cannas grow up really fast and fill in the gaps. Like a big mixed hedge of edibles. Make a 4-foot wide bed. Plant fruit trees in it like every 8 feet, and you're going to prune them to keep them short. But then in between them, you plant berries, you plant Jerusalem artichokes, you plant cannas, plant all that stuff, and you basically have an edible strip of garden there. I also, I have a thing. I like Osage oranges just because they're pretty, not because they're edible. But I don't know why I like them so much. Another thing you could do is plant, nitrogen fixers and then chop it and drop the top of it out all the time. Dara says, how do you feel about gardening in more temperate climates, e.g. zones 6-7 versus the tropical, subtropical regions? I would much rather garden in the tropics than garden in 6/7. But I'd much rather garden in 6/7 than 3/4. The tropics are just unbeatable for the production you can get and the variety of species. There's just no comparison. Plus, you get year-round. You can switch different plants different times of year. You grow coffee, vanilla, cinnamon, bananas and stuff. It's very difficult. Very difficult to compare that to growing cabbages and apples. You just grow so much more. All right, guys. So I am gonna call this thing because it's getting a little late, and my throat is not particularly good. I'm trying to get over a cold. I took a nap this afternoon because I was just beat, and I woke up. I drank some coffee, and I said I could handle this. I could do a Goodstream. I was going to do a video today, but I didn't get to finish it. So wait, I came to see all you guys. Where to get Osage? Yeah, I planted my own from seeds, but you could probably buy them at some specialty nurseries. It's not a cold, it's COVID. No. I have natural immunity. The first yam is the deepest would make a good song. It practically writes itself. That's true. I don't know. 6 or 7 nights in a row. You tell me, Alan. You're keeping track. I don't even know anymore. So, anyhow, guys. Thanks for joining me to talk about minimalist gardening. It doesn't have to be as complicated as you think. All you need are some seeds and sunshine. All you need is a garden hoe. You don't need to buy the kitchen sink. You can grow, grow, grow with less than you know. Don't let them sell you junk. Plant what you got, water it in well. All the rest is just bunk. All right, guys. Have a good night. God bless you all. Thank you for the super chats, everybody. I appreciate them. Appreciate the tips for the gardening. I like answering the questions, but it's like answering questions for tips. Hey, that's pretty good. That's satisfying. I appreciate it. It's very nice. But also, thanks to the members on this channel. I appreciate you guys that support the channel regularly. I sent out a newsletter today. If you're not on the newsletter, you can sign up for the newsletter. Below this video, there is a link to download the composting booklet. That is a bribe. The composting booklet puts you on my newsletter. And if you're on the newsletter, you'll see my book releases, and I try to find interesting bits and pieces to share about gardening and different people that are doing interesting things. So if you sign up for that newsletter, you can see what's going on. But in the newsletter, the most recent one, I've got the list of the books that have been transferred to my own publishing house. Now, multiple of my books are now under my own Good Books Publishing, as you can see. behind me here. And so unfortunately what's going to happen is that all the old reviews are not going to carry over. So Grow or Die, Compost Everything, I mean, they've got like 300 reviews each and good sales based on those reviews. Suddenly they will have 0 reviews again and be at the bottom of the charts. So when those come out, if you see that one of my books doesn't have any reviews and you have it and you like it, would you please try and review it for me? Because we've really got to get the reviews up, or else it looks like I've done nothing. Even though I've got multiple years of reviews, they're all going to get erased. So have a great night. Thank you all for everything. And hopefully I'll get a video up tomorrow. Until then, may your thumbs always be green.